Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1056A. And today's date is August 23rd, 2016. And the title of the episode is Foreign Demand for U.S. Treasuries Has Just Dried Up. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today the market is quite flat. We're seeing the market not really go anywhere. Gold pretty much holding steady right now. And what's very interesting is that the United States government central bankers, they are going to push as hard as they possibly can to convince everyone that the economy is fine, it's doing well, please believe us. And we can already see this happening. But when we look through this, we see that the economy is not doing well. We see that the economy is doing much, much worse. And we see in many different areas, especially in real estate, when we talked about Vancouver in Canada, we talked about the UK, we talk about Alberta, Canada, where single-family construction has fallen to the lowest level since 2009. And this is coming from the statistics of Canada. And what does this tell us? That this is spreading now to different countries, and housing prices, the sales of homes, they're starting to decline. But here in the United States, the U.S. government central bankers, they want everyone to believe up to the very last minute that everything is fine. Now, they did this back in 2008 because everyone most likely remembers Bernanke coming out saying, listen, the subprime is contained. Real estate will not go down. Real estate doesn't go down. And he said this during the summer months of 2008. And of course, he was trying to convince everyone that everything was fine. Well, the U.S. government, central bankers, and the various agencies, they're a little slicker now. They're able to manipulate a lot of the data. And they've made sure that we are in this constant state of believing what they say. Now, the census report came out that in July, the U.S. saw a whopping 654,000 new home sales, up 12.4% from the prior month and higher by 31% from a year ago. And they completely smashed the expectations of 580,000. Well, this looks suspicious right off the bat. And when we look at this, we can see that there was really no change out in the West. Actually, sales have fallen out in the West. And the South right now posted a massive 18.1% jump in the month of July, up 40% a year ago. And I remember back in 2007 going into 2008 when I was visiting Miami area, Fort Lauderdale area, there were cranes all over the place. Building going on like crazy. You just couldn't believe it, how much was happening. All of it came to a screeching halt. All that building were speculators buying up condos like crazy. We are seeing the same thing right now. Free money flowing in, foreign speculators in the market, and manipulation on top of that. We're seeing a repeat of what we saw prior to the crash of 2008. But this time it's going to be worse because this time, this housing bubble, people aren't actually in it. It is the central bank. It's the banking systems. It's hedge funds, investment companies, where they went out, they took the free money, and they purchased thousands upon thousands of homes. And they were instructed to hold them. Do not sell them. Rent them if you can, but do not sell them. The banks were instructed not to foreclose on people's homes. Do not let them back on the market. Keep them off the market because it will drive prices up. And they're still doing these same type of tricks. While all this was happening, the Fed was buying up the toxic real estate and put it onto its books. And that's where it sits. We see the Richmond Fed manufacturing survey. Well, it has plunged to negative 11. This is the lowest since January of 2013. It has missed expectations of a positive 6. So what are we looking at here? Well, this is the largest decline on record going back to 1993. And it looks like the bounce, the dead cat bounce, it's over. We see following the Eurozone's disappointing drift lower in manufacturing PMI and weakness in the German services, August U.S. preliminary manufacturing PMI, well, that printed a disappointing 52.1 and they expected a 52.6. There's weakness in employment. New orders are declining. Hope is fading. We are getting flashing warning lights that we are heading for a major collapse. And when we look at every single sector, it is pointing in the same direction. So what do the central banks do? Well, the Bank of Japan, they're making a move. They're going to double their ETF purchases to 6 trillion yen, or $58 billion, up from 3.3 trillion yen, which is equivalent to the Fed purchasing 580 billion ETFs. So when we look at this, what is the Bank of Japan actually doing? Well, they're nationalizing the stock market. And what does that mean? It means there's going to be no free and open market. It's going to be controlled. There's going to be price distortions, and they're going to continue to do this to grease the economy. And when the market is completely driven by the central bank and not by companies' earnings and anything like that, the entire market is completely fake. And this is the only way they can keep this system alive. We see in Europe, the ECB is buying private placement debt with no regard for safety or anything like that. So private companies, they're issuing debt because they know the ECB will purchase it. Why are they doing this? Because they need to keep the system alive. This whole entire thing is crashing around us. And remember, QE is supposed to spur lending and investment, but it's killing pension plans and it's fostering bond bubbles. So what the central banks are doing right now, it is hurting the economy for the everyday person. Who's it helping? It's helping the corporations. It's helping the banks. It's helping the elite. It's helping those people make more and more money as the system comes down. But the everyday person, they can barely make it through. Now we see that Treasury bonds, well, they're being dumped. And the other thing that we're seeing is that foreign demand for U.S. Treasury, it's dried up. Last week's tick data confirmed something the Fed Treasury custody account has indicated for the past several months. Foreign demand for U.S. government bonds has not only tumbled, but there has been aggressive selling. In the past 12 months, foreign central banks have sold a gargantuan $335 billion in U.S. Treasuries and $242 billion when looking at all foreign transactions, including private. It's declining rapidly. Now, why are they doing this? Because they're getting out of U.S. paper. They don't want to hold it when the system comes crumbling down. Countries are going to get out of the dollar, out of the petrodollar, because they don't want to have this in reserves when the system comes crashing down. Other countries realize this, and this is why we see a huge push to get out of all U.S. paper. And people say, well, really, do you have any proof that the government is lying about employment? Government is lying about everything that we see here? Well, all we have to do is go to the receipts from the Federal Unemployment Tax Act, FUTA, and when we look at them, they've been falling steadily since 2012. How could that be? Because when you think about it, the government is continually telling us that we're adding more and more jobs, the unemployment rate is coming down, but the Federal Unemployment Tax Act, that has been, the receipts have been declining. And when we look at this, we can see that the FUTA tax is levied at 6% of the first $7,000 of an employee's wage. Since 2012, unemployment tax receipts have been falling. So, if the U.S. economy is creating jobs, people are working now, why is the number falling? Well, it's either the BLS numbers are completely wrong, or the quality of new jobs created must be very poor. And we can see it's a combination of both. People are losing the high-paying jobs. They're finding part-time work, maybe 1, 2, 3 jobs, to make up the difference from losing that high-paying job. And then we have the other end where people can't find work at all. And when we go right to the actual facts, we can see that the government is lying. When we go to the actual facts that foreign governments are dumping treasuries, we can see the government is lying. When we go through all the economic indicators, and we see that manufacturing is declining, GDP is declining, the housing market is declining, prices are coming down. We're already seeing it in many, many different countries. It's all happening at the same time. But the corporate media, nobody really wants to talk about it. They just want to talk about how housing is surging in one little area through manipulation, through free money, to convince the entire country and the world that everything is fine. They did this back in 2008, where they told everyone it's all fine. Real estate doesn't go down. That's ridiculous talk. But what's happening right now is that the entire system, it's falling apart. And as we get closer and closer to the collapse, this is one signal that you can look at here, is that the U.S. government central bankers, they're going to push a recovery so hard, you're not even going to know what's happening, because they're going to make everything seem like it's perfectly fine. I also know there's elections coming up and they do this at the same exact time. But this is a huge push right now to convince everyone. And they're going to continually do it. They will not let up. They'll even do it while the system is crashing. And this is why the Fed has already come out and said, listen, if there's an economic shock, we're going to have to start QE up once again, and most likely we'll have to do $4 trillion, most likely a little bit more than that, to keep the system alive. Look what the other central banks are doing around the world to keep the system afloat. The only reason they would do this, it's because if they stop, the whole thing falls apart. It's not a real system anymore. It's a controlled, manipulated economic system. The people are standing on the sides, and the central banks, they're the ones who are doing everything to keep it all up and running. It's not real. It's an illusion. And guess what happens to illusions? They come to an end. And this illusion will come to an end one way or another. It's either they'll bring it down in their own terms, or there'll be a black swan and they will not be able to control it. And of course, They're looking to bring it down themselves because they would like to blame this on another country or group. They don't want to be blamed for what is about to happen. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.